Hi everybody, can you guys hear me? Yes. How's everybody doing today? Good, yeah, so I know this session is happening after lunch, so I hope you enjoy it, and if you don't, I hope you get a good 30-minute nap in. So today I'm going to be talking to you about method marketing. It's a methodology that I've developed over the course of my time in the gaming industry, which has been the better part of a decade. So I hope that you find some relevance. I know that I'm speaking to a room full of product marketers. I can't really see you, so I'm going to move around a little as much as I can. But let's dig right into it. So I want to ask you all, what do you think these four people have in common? And take a minute, you can talk to your neighbors. And if anybody knows, raise your hand or shout it out.
They're rich and famous.
They are rich and famous. What was that? They are method actors. So method acting is basically an approach to acting that a lot of actors and actresses take to really dig deep into the character and deliver a very compelling performance to their audience. So Christian Bale, for example, lost 60 pounds for The Machinist to play an emaciated insomniac. Hilary Swank in For Boys Don't Cry played a transgender man and lived that way for a man to play a convincing role. Natalie Portman, as a lot of you know, took intensive ballet classes to prepare for her role in The Black Swan. And Ranveer Singh, who is a Bollywood actor, also kept himself in isolation for weeks preparing for his role in Padmavati. So this kind of leads to what method marketing is. It's derived from method acting, which is to submerge yourself completely in the character that you're playing. And it's an approach to growth marketing that immerses a marketer into a product's brand so that you can understand the perspective of your end user or customer better. And that allows for a much more impactful messaging and positioning through identified effective distribution channels. So you might wonder what Kim Kardashian has to do with method marketing. So in a previous gaming company that I worked at Glue, I had the privilege of working on the very successful Kim Kardashian Hollywood game and had the opportunity to meet with her. And by talking to her about her selfie-loving fans and the way that she communicates with them on Instagram, it actually translated very well to the types of creatives that we were developing to really speak to her audience, right? Like, we took a cue from her to be like, okay, her audience wants to know what's happening in real time. They love that authentic, transparent approach that she provides her viewers in terms of a sneak peek into her world. So the game would do things like she would text our designers and let them know what she was going to wear for Paris Fashion Week a week before she would go. And our designers would actually be able to recreate those designs and allow our players to purchase them as in-app purchases, all the designer clothes and purses that she was wearing. So by being able to speak to an audience in the same way that this brand represented, we were able to be more effective in the types of content that we created. The benefits to method marketing are understanding your end users' needs better. What is it that they are seeking in interacting with your product? It's also to craft messaging that resonates more strongly and effectively with that end user. And by doing method marketing, you can also scale your audience by acquiring new users that you may not from traditional acquisition methods. Okay, how many Harry Potter fans do we have in the audience? Yes, okay. Well, I am going to show you something that I hope you will love next, and it is a quick video.
Creating a story that's our own.
My favorite character in the game is Professor Flitwick.
Professor McGonagall.
Snape.
Professor Flitwick having his fancy little mustache.
It was a really
realistic and very reminiscent of the movies.
We already pre-registered, so we're just waiting for it to come out.
I'm excited about continuing the story.
I will absolutely download the game.
I loved it.
So that's a piece of content marketing that our team back at Jam City made following the celebration of Harry Potter, which is a huge conference where 30,000 Harry Potter fans from all over the world descend into Orlando, Florida, to just embrace the magic of the wizarding world. And it was so impactful and meaningful and fulfilling to us as marketers to be there because we got to speak directly to our end customers and to our end users. These are the diehard fans who have been following the Harry Potter story for years, and now we got to basically give them the experience of going to Hogwarts as a student. And so by talking to them, again, we really were able to capture that spirit and emotion of they get to finally be a student at Hogwarts, they get to interact with their favorite professors, and taking all those emotions, we were able to craft this kind of sentimental, nostalgic piece of content that we could then scale and share with a much larger audience through their Facebook channels and our Facebook channels as well. So the first tip I would say is to put yourself in the shoes of your end user to understand where they're living. Where are they having these conversations? What are they talking about? What are the forums in which they're talking about? And what this does, it actually allows you to go beyond just traditional user acquisition channels and look at non-traditional channels. And the combination of both of that is what leads to unprecedented growth for your product. An example of this is when we were launching Gordon Ramsay's game, going beyond, again, just ads that we would be serving to fans of time management games or fans of Gordon Ramsay, I knew that he had a really big presence on Reddit. So we conducted a Reddit AMA in which he asked all of his fans to tune in and ask him anything about restaurants or his upcoming game. And it became the 6th most engaged with Reddit AMA after President Obama's based on upvotes. And we basically were able to, through a tracking link in the description, bring in a new slew of players who ended up having 4 times the LTV or the lifetime value of players that we had in our ecosystem versus paid and organic user acquisition users. So though we weren't able to scale it the way that you can through UA ads and networks, they were a very highly monetizing, highly valuable group of people that we were able to bring in because we went beyond traditional channels to reach our end users. The second tip I would give is to integrate your messaging and positioning across all stakeholders to really amplify that conversion. One way I like to think about this is as product marketers, we are kind of like the conductors of an orchestra, right? So sometimes we are not necessarily the star of the show, but we are orchestrating our social media managers who might, represent the violinist, and our email and CRM who are keeping a cadence like percussion might. And we're basically making sure that everybody is singing the same message and everyone is kind of orchestrated into the right rhythm and to the right beat so that you can, at the right moments in the music, be able to amplify those messages because everything is hitting at the same time to your end user. So when everyone is working towards that, the results can be phenomenal. And we've seen that over and over again when PR messaging lines up with social, lines up with email, and lines up with video content that you might create. And the third tip is to really take risks and embrace emerging platforms as relevant to your product to reach new audiences. One thing that we experimented with that we didn't have any historical data to really support was being able to create an interactive experience on Snapchat Lens for Harry Potter Hogwarts Mystery. One of the mechanics in the game was to trace spells, and then you are able to progress by completing certain spells in your charms class. And we were able to replicate a little piece of that mechanic into a Snapchat Lens, give people a taste of that if they hadn't fully committed to downloading the game, and then provide a direct swipe up to download option from the Snapchat Lens. And we were very pleasantly surprised with the results that we saw from those users that we got from Snapchat. It was a much younger audience, an audience that, again, we weren't typically able to target from our traditional user acquisition, and it was also a highly engaged audience. So I would encourage all of you to always take risks, to keep an eye out on what's happening in the competitive landscape, and take risks on emerging platforms. So to summarize the tips that we talked about, again, putting yourself in your end user's shoes. Where are they living, breathing? What conversations are they having? And have a meaningful presence there, whether that's as a moderator or as creating content for them in those channels. Integrate your messaging across all stakeholders to really amplify the conversion and take risks. So because you guys have all been amazing and I don't see too many people napping, I wanted to throw in a bonus tip that recently my team has been experimenting more with, which is segmented messaging. Oftentimes, we all know that we can't talk to everybody in our audience in the same way, right? We have usually our core primary audience, we have secondary audience, we have tertiary audience, and they may not all be the same people. For Words with Friends, for example, your primary audience is older female, but our secondary and tertiary audiences are male, they're younger, so we wouldn't deliver the same message to them. We wouldn't be in the same distribution channels as our core audience. So if you have the opportunity or if you have the tools to be able to do segmented messaging, whether that's through emails, push notifications, in-game messaging, it is much more effective because at the end of the day, it will be a much more targeted and impactful message if you can directly respond to what it is that end user is looking for in your product, whether that's an escape, whether that's a feeling of progression, feeling of achievement, a feeling of competition. You can really hone in and deliver exactly the kind of message that they want to hear to get them more engaged in your product. So with that, I'm going to open this up for questions. Let me know.
Let's first give her a quick round of applause. Thank you. I'll be coming around with the mic if anybody wants to raise their hand. I'm sure there's some questions. Come on.
And if you think of questions to ask later too, you can tweet at @MethodMarketer on Twitter as well.
I got a question.
Sure.
You can hear me all right?
Yes.
So you've encouraged to take big risks on new and emerging platforms. Can you think of an example of a risk you took that failed? And how did you know that the platform failed versus you failing to appropriately engage in the platform?
That's a great question. So his question was, we've talked about taking risks on different emerging platforms. Is there an example of a risk that I took that failed in terms of either it didn't work for the product or it didn't work for the platform? So I think one example that comes to mind is when working on Hogwarts Mystery, we also took a chance on developing, this is when Facebook Watch videos were first coming out, and they had like this AR, they were basically trying to replicate a lot of what Snapchat was doing, and so they had this kind of AR lens component to it. And we tried to do this program where basically anyone who got on Facebook, the Facebook Lens program could record themselves singing the Harry Potter Hogwarts school song, and then we would try to combine that into like a chorus, and it would be a big choir. For a few different reasons, it didn't quite work. I mean, one, I think it could have been an issue with just the type of content that we were trying to market. I mean, not everybody, just because you love Hogwarts doesn't mean that you want everyone to hear your voice or that you want everyone to, kind of you want to share that part of it necessarily. But I think it was also very early on in Facebook's kind of use of it, and they didn't have the reach that we wanted. I think there was a big gap in terms of like, well, we want to be able to promote this to anybody who's liked the Facebook page for Harry Potter, but that organic reach and share of voice wasn't there. So without that, it also just wasn't being scaled to a large audience, and for that reason, it didn't have like quite the adoption that we wanted.
Great answer, thanks.
Okay, all right. Hi, so this is an awesome talk, and I think with games, people are like, yeah, I really come on in, I want to play these games, but do you have any experience trying to build community or reach customers kind of where they are in a place where your company isn't welcome? Say maybe it's a community of people and they're like, we don't want the big company coming in and talking to us, we're, just, building community amongst ourselves. What kind of tips do you have for that?
That's a good question. So if there is kind of resistance to somebody coming in and trying to establish community, I would say there's probably two approaches you could consider. One would be let it form from the ground up, let a grassroots type of effort take shape, and listen to those people and listen to what it is that they want to get out of it, so that you kind of have a better understanding of like what their real issues are, what are they concerned about, before telling them what it is that they should be concerned about or what it is that you're trying to sell to them. So just having a kind of a listening ear in on those conversations is one way to just let it form from the ground up and then have them be the owners of that. Another way too is if you can find, and then once that community starts to take form and there might be certain voices that are louder, like make them a brand ambassador for what it is that you want by reaching out to them one-on-one and just being like, hey, like we want to hear more from you, like what can we do? And then can you help us like evangelize this idea or like bring it to larger audiences? And the second thing is, I think we're starting to see more relevance with influencers. The word influencer can have so many different meanings, and I think it can have negative connotations. It can have, just different kind of expectations around what the effectiveness could be. But I think when I'm talking about influencers, it's more just like they have already established themselves as credible sources in a community. So leverage them as voices who have built trust versus trying to create an influencer for a product that there is a disconnect between. Like there should be organic influencers that come out of, whether that's for gaming, whether that's for a pharma company or whatever it is, like there can be kind of more organic approaches to identifying someone as an influencer who may not consider themselves an influencer. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I also work in gaming, and I'm actually curious. We often struggle with the problem of how much we invest in brand marketing and how much we invest in tactics and more direct engagement. And I'm just wondering, especially in terms of gaming, do you see a place, mobile gaming, do you see a place for that? I mean, I know like your original titles already had a brand, so you didn't really need to build on them, but with Words with Friends, where it's being its own brand, do you see a value in investing in brand tactics that don't necessarily lead back to actual results, tangible results?
Yes, absolutely. I see a value in brand marketing, and there is a place for it. And I would disagree that you can't show results for it. I think we are moving to an age where we can have better analytics tools built into the types of campaigns that we run. We have better tools in game to also understand just the current ecosystem and then what differences and spikes might happen from a campaign that you're running for a certain amount of time. I think we're moving towards, mobile gaming specifically, is moving towards a more data-driven approach, and you feel like you have to justify every marketing dollar that's spent. But that being said, I do believe that an investment in the types of attribution, deep linking, like those kinds of efforts, is where you're going to be able to prove those results, and has to start somewhere, but once you have a set of data to point to, you can always build and iterate off of that. So I do see, and especially with a game like Words with Friends that's been around for 10 years, when games like that, I believe, are around not because of just the mechanics that we're selling our customers on, but really about the connections and the player stories. And that's always going to have relevance in our community, especially more now than ever. People want to feel connected. People want to feel humanity in a positive way. And brand marketing is going to help shape what that game's place is in our lives today, and by highlighting some of the softer things that are not necessarily like a direct to download feature, we can still do that, and it can still be effective, and it's still important.
Thanks. I really like the idea of method marketing. Could you talk more about like how to embed yourself with your end customer? Because I definitely get the benefits, but maybe if you could talk a little bit more about how to embed yourself and feel what they feel.
Yeah, I think if you have an existing product that's in the marketplace, one place to start is by doing surveys within the game, right? Like you can find out through consumer insights where it is that your active players are. Where are they geographically? Where are they online in a digital sense? Like there is so much data that you can collect that they can provide voluntarily through surveys in your game. And then from doing that, for example, if you know that your product targets stay-at-home moms with disposable income, you can then go to certain blogs or maybe try Pinterest and like try to see what presence they have there, because you can gauge you can use a survey as a starting point and then go there to see if there's a connection that you can make to the type of content you serve there, and then you could kind of see if that works in terms of messaging to them.
Hi, great tips. I had one question. In terms of like, how do you see method marketing applicable to an enterprise product or a user versus a consumer product?
Can you repeat that question, please?
How do you see method marketing's application for an enterprise product or user versus a consumer product?
That's a good question. I mean, my experience has been in a direct-to-consumer marketing method, so I would have to think a little bit more about that one. But I think, an enterprise at the end of the day is made up of individuals who are marketing the product. So I think you can still apply some of that by taking on a better understanding through consumer insights, through surveys, through the distribution channels or communities or forums or places that exist online to still understand your end product. But you're right, it's not something that's necessarily been applied to an enterprise at this stage, but I would love to explore more and think about that. Any other questions?
Is that about it for questions? All right, well then let's give her one more big round of applause.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.